The jungle whispers. The jungle was alive with sound. Birds called from the canopy, insects buzzed in thick clouds, and the air was heavy with the scent of earth and rain. Yet there was something deeper beneath the natural rhythm, something hidden, waiting. A small group of explorers moved carefully through the undergrowth, their boots sinking into the damp soil. Leaves brushed against their shoulders, and the sun above was almost gone, trapped behind layers of green. The leader, a man named David, raised his hand to signal a pause. "Listen," he whispered. The others fell silent. At first, they only heard the hum of cicadas, but then, faint and low, came another sound. It was not an animal call, not the wind. It was a slow thrum, like a heart beating under the ground. The group exchanged nervous glances. Maria, the youngest of them, tried to laugh. "Probably water under the rocks," she said. But her voice shook. The sound grew for a moment, then faded again, leaving the jungle too quiet. Even the birds stopped calling. They continued walking, guided by an old map passed down in the village. The map marked a place deep in the jungle where the earth was said to glow. The local people called it the sleeping spirit. They warned that no one should disturb it. David had dismissed it as superstition, but now unease tugged at his thoughts. The air grew thicker. Vines hung low like twisted ropes, roots rose from the ground, and each step felt heavier. The trees here were strange, their trunks wrapped around something beneath the soil. Maria stopped suddenly. "Look at this." She pointed to a metallic shape hidden under moss. It was smooth, not like stone. She brushed it with her hand, revealing a dark surface that gleamed faintly even in the dim light. The others crowded around. Soon they found more pieces, a curve of metal here, a straight edge there, all swallowed by nature. The ground beneath them was no ordinary ground. It was a shell, vast and ancient. The explorers felt a cold wave of realization. They were walking on something that was not Earth at all, but a machine. At night they set up a small camp. A fire crackled weakly, pushing back the shadows, but the jungle did not feel safe. Every few minutes, the deep thrum returned. Maria sat near the fire, hugging her knees. "The villagers were right," she whispered. "This place is alive." David frowned, trying to stay calm. "It's old tech, maybe from before the war," he said, but even he was not sure. His words felt empty. The jungle pressed closer, the night air full of whispers carried by the wind. Suddenly, their radios flickered with static. The screens of their equipment glowed faintly, even though batteries were nearly dead. One explorer shouted, "My compass is spinning." Panic filled the group. The ship under their feet was waking. They decided to investigate, driven by fear but also by curiosity. With flashlights, they searched the ground. Soon they found a hollow, a part of the surface exposed. David knelt and touched it. The moment his fingers brushed the metal, a line of light spread across it like veins, glowing softly blue. The ground shuddered. Birds screamed and took flight. Animals burst from the bushes in a frenzy to escape. The explorers stumbled back, hearts pounding. The light grew brighter, forming strange patterns, symbols no one could understand. Maria gasped. "It's listening to us." Her voice was barely a whisper. David wanted to deny it, but he could not. The glowing lines seemed to pulse in rhythm with their own heartbeats. They stood frozen, unsure if they had awakened a treasure or a curse. The jungle around them roared with sudden storms. Thunder rolled across the sky. Rain fell hard, but the glowing symbols did not fade. Instead, they read wider, showing the outline of something massive hidden beneath the earth. The explorers knew they had uncovered something far greater than ruins. It was not a temple, not a statue. It was a ship. A giant ship that had slept under the jungle for centuries. Fear mixed with awe, David whispered to himself, "What kind of ship could sleep for so long?" No one answered. They only stared as a faint humming voice echoed from the ground. Soft at first, then stronger, like a distant engine trying to breathe again. The jungle seemed to lean in, the shadows watching, the storm raging, and the explorers realized they had crossed a line they could never return from. In that moment, the jungle itself felt alive. Every tree, every vine, every stone vibrating with the same pulse. The ship was no longer silent, it was aware. Maria shivered, rain running down her face. "We shouldn't be here," she said, her words lost in the rising hum. David clenched his fists, torn between fear and discovery. "We've started something," he said. something humanity forgot. And as the storm howled above, the jungle whispered back, the ship was awake, and it was listening. The silent giant, the storm had passed by morning, but the jungle felt different. The air was thick with silence. The usual calls of birds and monkeys were gone, as if the forest itself held its breath. The explorers stood around the strange glowing lines that had spread across the ground. No one spoke. David looked at the surface, brushing more moss away. Beneath the green was not soil but smooth black metal, wide enough to stretch farther than their eyes could see. Maria whispered, "It's not ruins. It's a body." Her voice trembled. The others nodded without a word. The jungle floor was not earth. It was the skin of something sleeping. As the sun rose higher, the glowing patterns pulsed faintly, like veins of light beneath the surface. The ship seemed alive. The explorers set out to map the area, pacing carefully in every direction. After hours, they realized the truth. The metal stretched for hundreds of meters, maybe more. It was not just a ship. It was a giant. The group returned to their camp, shaken and confused. Their devices continued to flicker with strange energy. Batteries that had been almost drained the night before were now full. David tested his radio. It hissed with static, then a strange voice whispered through, not in any human tongue. The voice was low, drawn out, like echoes underwater. The explorers froze. Maria covered her ears. "It's talking," she said. David frowned. "No, it's trying to remember." Nearby, animals behaved strangely. Deer and jaguars circled at a distance, watching but not attacking. Even insects avoided the glowing lines. The jungle obeyed the presence of the silent giant. As night fell again, the hum returned, stronger this time. The ground vibrated. Their campfire shook. Sparks leapt into the air. One of the explorers shouted in fear, "It's going to break free." David silenced him, though his own heart pounded. With cautious steps, David led them closer to the largest patch of glowing lines. There, the surface was smoother, almost like a sealed door. Maria touched it lightly, and the lines of light raced outwards, circling the jungle floor. The trees groaned as roots tore away from the surface. Vines slid off like snakes retreating. Suddenly, the door shifted. A deep grinding echoed through the forest. The ground shook. Birds burst from the canopy in waves. The explorers stumbled back, eyes wide. The sealed plate lifted, slowly, painfully, as if something ancient remembered how to breathe. A hollow chamber yawned open before them, filled with stale air and the scent of rust and rain. Darkness stretched inside, but faint blue lights glowed like stars across the walls. The explorers stared, half in terror, half in awe. David tightened his grip on the flashlight. "We go in," he said firmly. The others hesitated, Maria's face pale. "What if it closes behind us?" she asked. David shook his head. "It opened because of us. It won't close without us," he said, though he wasn't sure. They stepped inside, their lights cutting through the vast chamber. Walls curved high above. Vines had forced their way inside, wrapping around old machines, but still the structure felt intact, untouched by centuries. Their footsteps echoed, every sound too loud. Maria brushed a panel with her hand, and the ship responded. Lights flickered on one by one, illuminating the hall. The explorers gasped. It was like stepping into a cathedral, only this cathedral was made of steel and memory. Drawings and etchings stretched along the walls, not human, not alien, but something in between. Scenes of battles among the stars, ships raining fire, planets burning, and always at the center. This ship, the giant that had fought and survived, one explorer whispered. "This is not discovery. This is warning." A low chime rang from deeper within the ship, long and haunting, like a bell calling them further. The sound vibrated through their bones, pulling them forward. The group moved as if in a trance, their fear mixed with curiosity. They reached a vast chamber at the heart of the structure. A circular core towered in the center, faintly glowing. Cables and vines twisted around it like veins. David stepped closer. "This is its heart," he said softly. The core pulsed in rhythm, alive, waiting. Suddenly their radios hissed again. This time the voice was clearer. Broken words in a language not spoken for centuries. "Guardian. Humanity. Return." The explorers froze, eyes wide. Maria whispered, "It knows us." Their fear turned to something heavier, responsibility. This was not just a relic, not just a machine. It was a Garin, Dian of a forgotten war. And now it had sensed humanity once more. David clenched his fists. "We can't turn back now," he said. The others nodded slowly, even as their hands shook. Behind them, the chamber door groaned wider, as if the ship itself wanted them inside. Deeper, closer to its secrets, the silent giant had begun to wake, and the jungle no longer belonged to itself. It belonged to the ship and to the humans it had waited for. First awakening, the explorers stood before the glowing core, their breaths shallow. The air inside the chamber was heavy and warm, almost alive. It felt like standing inside the chest of a giant, listening to its slow heartbeat. Maria's flashlight trembled in her hand. Beams of light cut across the walls, showing strange patterns carved into metal. Words and symbols no one could read, yet the ship seemed to respond to their presence. Lights flickered, shadows moved, and the core pulsed faster. David placed his hand near the surface, not touching, but close enough that the glow brightened. The hum in the chamber rose, a low vibration that shook the floor beneath their boots. "It knows us," David whispered, his voice echoing in the hall. The others shuffled nervously. One explorer muttered, "This is wrong, we shouldn't be here." But none of them stepped back. Curiosity burned stronger than fear. A sudden gust of air swept through the chamber. Though there were no vents, the vines wrapped around the walls shivered as if blown by an unseen wind. Dust fell from the ceiling. The ship was breathing. Then it happened. The core pulsed once, hard. The entire chamber lit up. Blue light raced along hidden lines in the walls, spreading outward like rivers. The ship was waking. Their radios crackled again, this time the voice clearer, broken but human. "System. Reboot. Guardian active." The words froze them where they stood. Maria whispered, "Did it say Guardian?" David swallowed hard, nodding slowly. His mind raced. If this ship had been built by humans long ago, then it was more than a weapon. It was a protector, and it had been left here to wait. Suddenly the floor shifted. Panels moved, forming steps leading deeper. The explorers stumbled as the giant adjusted itself. The ground no longer solid but alive. The jungle outside roared as birds screamed and animals fled. Trees cracked as roots pulled free from metal beneath. They followed the steps, drawn by the sound of the core's pulse. Deeper, they went into the silent giant's body, until they reached another vast chamber. This one filled with rows of seats and consoles covered in dust and vines. Maria brushed the surface of one console. Her hand left streaks on the thick layer of time. Lights flared to life, symbols glowed, and for a brief second the screen showed a map of stars, systems scattered across the void, many marked with scars of war. "This was a command room," David said softly, his voice thick with awe. "This ship fought battles." Their radio sparked again. "Warning. Enemy detected." Long silence ended. The ship's broken voice filled the chamber. The explorers froze, exchanging frightened looks. Maria's eyes widened. "It thinks the war is still happening," she whispered. Before David could respond, the walls shook violently. A deafening sound rang out, a deep horn echoing through the jungle. It was not meant for them. It was a signal, a call across the skies. Outside, clouds swirled. Lightning cut across the horizon. The jungle trembled as massive sections of the ground split open. Towers of metal rose from beneath the earth. Cannons long buried revealed themselves, vines snapping off like old ropes. The explorers rushed to the opening, staring in disbelief. The jungle was no longer a jungle. It was becoming a fortress. David's heart pounded. He realized. "And the truth? It's preparing for war," he said. Maria shook her head. "Against who? There's no war now." But far above, in the cold silence of space, someone was listening. The signal sent by the jungle ship had not vanished into nothing. It had reached beyond Earth, beyond the stars, and eyes that had long forgotten humanity turned to look again. Back inside the ship, the explorers huddled in fear as consoles lit one after another. Voices whispered in broken language. "Guardian online. Awaiting command. Humanity required." David clenched his fists, his voice shaking. "It needs us. It was built for us, and now it wants us to lead it again." The others looked at him with wide eyes, torn between fear and awe. They had stumbled upon a sleeping relic, but what they found was not just history, it was power, raw and dangerous, and as the jungle ship roared louder, its pulse shaking the forest around it, they understood one terrifying truth. The first awakening was not complete, it was only the beginning. Shadows of the past. The explorers stood frozen inside the command room. The glowing panels around them hummed softly. Lines of light traced across walls and ceilings, and strange voices continued to whisper through the static of their radios. It was as if the ship itself was trying to speak. David stepped closer to one of the consoles, brushing dust away. The screen flickered, and images formed. At first, they were only shapes, but then the shapes became clear. Battlefields among stars, ships locked in combat, explosions tearing across the void. The explorers gasped. Maria whispered, "This is history." Her voice trembled. "This ship fought in wars." The images shifted, showing alien fleets, vast armadas with strange designs, creatures with long limbs and sharp faces carved into banners. They rained fire upon human colonies. Cities crumbled, worlds burned. Then, through all the smoke and destruction, the jungle ship appeared, its cannons blazing, cutting through enemy lines like thunder. The explorers stared in silence, awe mixed with horror. They were watching a war forgotten by their own people. David clenched his fists. "They never told us this," he muttered. Another panel lit up, showing words in a broken mixture of English and ancient code. "Guardian vessel. Purpose. Defend humanity from extinction." The message burned into their minds. Maria's eyes widened. This ship was built to protect us. Suddenly, the air grew colder. The hum turned sharp. The ship's voice whispered again, this time clearer. "Warning. Unfinished battle. Hostile presence remains." David looked at the others, his face pale. "It thinks the enemy is still out there." The explorers exchanged nervous glances. Outside, the jungle trembled as more sections of the ground split open. Vast towers rose skyward, ancient weapons pointing at the horizon. The ship was not only remembering, it was preparing. Maria pressed her hands over her ears. The voices grew louder inside her head, images of death and fire flashing through her thoughts. She saw soldiers screaming, ships breaking apart, and then the jungle ship standing alone. "A survivor," she gasped, falling to her knees. "It's showing me everything," she whispered. David knelt beside her, gripping her shoulder. "It's not trying to hurt you. It's passing its memory to us," he said. Slowly, Maria raised her head, tears on her cheeks. "They left it here on purpose," she whispered. "They buried it in the jungle so it could sleep, but not die." The explorers understood then. The vines and roots that had hidden the ship for centuries had not destroyed it. They had protected it, wrapping it in a cocoon until humanity returned. The consoles flared again, and a final image appeared. It showed the enemy, tall, thin creatures with cold eyes, their warships black as night. They carried banners of conquest, and their fleets numbered in the thousands. The explorers shivered even as shadows. The enemy looked terrifying. The ship's voice echoed once more. "Enemy returns. Prepare defense." The chamber shook violently, the lights flared, and dust rained from the ceiling. Outside, a beam of light shot into the sky, piercing the clouds. It was a signal, a call to arms. David realized what had happened. "It's reaching out to the stars," he said. Maria's face went pale. "If the enemy is still alive, they will hear this too." Far above, in the blackness of space, ancient listening posts, long, silent, flickered to life, and somewhere beyond, in the cold heart of the galaxy, a forgotten empire stirred. Back inside, the explorers held each other's gaze. None of them dared to speak, but in their hearts, they knew what this meant. Humanity had not been alone in the past, and humanity was not alone now. David stepped toward the core, his hand trembling. The glow brightened at his presence. The ship whispered again. "Awaiting command?" Humanity required. The explorers understood. The jungle ship had not simply awakened, it had chosen them. They were the first humans it had seen in centuries, and now it looked to them for guidance. Maria whispered, her voice small. "If we control it, we can save humanity, but if we fail, we bring death to everyone." Outside, the jungle was no longer a jungle. It had become a living fortress. Birds no longer sang. Animals fled, and the air itself pulsed with the heartbeat of the ship. The shadows of the past had returned, and with them came the promise of war. The enemy returns. Far beyond Earth, in the silent cold of space, the signal from the jungle ship spread like ripples in water. It crossed empty systems, dead stars, and forgotten colonies until it reached a place where light had not touched in centuries. There, Hidden in darkness, old machines stirred. On a distant world, black towers rose like teeth. Inside them, tall, thin figures stood motionless until the signal reached their ears. Their eyes glowed faint silver. Their voices hissed in a language sharp as broken glass. They had not forgotten humanity. They had only been waiting. The Guardian stirs. One hissed. The humans have awoken it. Another leaned forward, its face long and cruel. Then the unfinished war must be finished. Their fleets began to move, massive ships breaking through clouds of ash and dust, wings of steel spreading wide, their engines lit like suns. Entire armadas turned toward the signal, toward Earth. Back in the jungle, the explorers felt the weight of what they had done. The ship's core pulsed brighter, the ground shook again. Towers rose taller, and the voice whispered clearer now. Enemy approaches. Humanity required. Prepare defense. David clenched his fists, his face pale. It's not just showing us the past anymore, he said. It's warning us about now. Maria stepped forward, trembling. If the enemy is coming, Earth doesn't even know. No one believes these old legends. The others argued in fear. One said they should flee. Another said they must destroy the ship before it calls more attention. But the truth was clear. The enemy already knew. Outside, thunder rolled across the sky. Though no storm had formed, the ship was bending the air, bending the world around it, preparing itself for war. The jungle that had hidden it for centuries was now a battlefield in waiting. The explorers climbed higher into one of the towers that had risen. From the top, they saw the jungle stretching wide, but now metal pierced through the trees. Cannons, launchers, towers, all part of the sleeping giant's body. The sight stole their breath. Maria whispered, "This is not just a ship. It's a fortress." As they watched, a strange glow streaked. Across the night sky, not lightning, not stars, something else, a flare from the heavens. David's eyes widened. He recognized it. It was not from Earth. It was a ship entering the atmosphere. Panic spread through the group. If alien scouts had arrived already, then the armada was not far behind. The jungle ship seemed to sense it too. Alarms rang in the command room. Voices whispered, "Contact! Hostile presence confirmed!" The explorers rushed back inside. Screens flickered, showing images of the sky above, dark shapes descending fast. The first enemy scouts had come to Earth. David's voice shook. "We woke the Guardian, but now the war comes with it." The ship's lights grew harsher, weapons powered up, the hum became a roar. The vines and roots that had wrapped around its body burned away as energy surged through its frame. The jungle giant was not hiding anymore. It was rising. Maria clutched David's arm. "We can't control this, it's too big, too alive." But the ship's voice returned, stronger than ever. Awaiting command, humanity, lead. The explorers stared at one another, their fear heavy. But beneath it was something else, a spark of duty. Outside, explosions shook the night as the first alien ships fired upon the jungle. Streaks of fire cut through trees. The earth shook. The fortress answered. Cannons that had been buried for centuries fired bolts of light into the sky. 2 enemy scouts were torn apart instantly, burning wreckage crashing into the forest. The explorers clung to the walls as the ground shook from the recoil. The ship roared, every weapon blazing. It had been patient for centuries, but now its hunger for battle returned. The aliens were not deterred. More ships poured through the clouds, black and sharp, their weapons flashing. The war that had been forgotten by humanity was alive again. David shouted above the noise. "This is only the beginning. The real fleet is still coming." The explorers felt the truth of his words. What they faced now were only shadows, scouts sent ahead. The true storm was still beyond the stars, moving fast, and as the jungle burned and the sky filled with fire, they realized one terrifying fact. By waking the Guardian, they had brought the enemy back to Earth. Humanity's bond. The jungle burned under alien fire. Smoke rose into the night. Flames licked the sky. The explorers stumbled through trembling halls of the ship, their hearts pounding with fear. Above them, the roar of cannons shook the air. The Guardian was awake, but it was fighting alone. David shouted over the thunder, "It's powerful, but it doesn't know what to target. It's striking blind." The ship fired at the sky, each blast destroying 1 or 2 scouts. But more ships slipped through, their weapons tearing into the forest. Explosions split trees. Animals screamed and fled. Maria clung to a console, her eyes wide. "It needs us," she whispered. "It keeps saying humanity lead. Maybe it cannot fight properly without us." The words struck David. He looked at the glowing core deep within the chamber, pulsing like a heart. Waiting. He stepped closer, but the energy radiating from it pushed him back. The hum grew louder, almost like a voice calling. Their radios flared again. This time the ship's words were clearer. Guardian vessel. Awaiting command. Human connection required. David's chest tightened. He understood. It's alive, but it was built to bond with us. Without that bond, it's half blind, half asleep. The others hesitated, fear painted on their faces. Who could stand before something so vast, so powerful, and dare to command it? The wrong move could destroy everything. Maria's voice shook. If it chooses the wrong person, maybe it kills us. Maybe it shuts down again. Outside, the sky thundered with more alien fire. One of the towers crackled and fell, shaking the ground. The Guardian groaned like a wounded beast, its cannons firing wildly. The aliens pressed harder. David clenched his fists, his eyes fixed on the core. If we do nothing, Earth dies, he said, his voice firm. We have no choice. He stepped forward, fighting against the pressure of the energy, each step heavier. His skin burned with heat, his vision blurred, but he pressed on. Maria cried out, "David, stop, it'll kill you." But he ignored her. Finally he reached the core, its surface glowing like molten light. He raised his hand and pressed it against the surface. The world shattered into fire and memory. Visions rushed into his mind, stars burning, fleets colliding, human voices screaming commands, the Guardian fighting in battles long forgotten, every shot, every strike, every loss engraved into its memory. David gasped, nearly falling. But then he heard another voice, softer, clearer. Human. Guardian online. Human pilot accepted. The ship's hum changed instantly, no longer chaotic. It matched his heartbeat, every pulse in sync with his breath. His thoughts echoed through its systems, and the cannons outside turned with precision. The explorers stared in awe as the ship's movements sharpened, its fire no longer wild but controlled. Blasts of light tore through alien scouts with deadly accuracy. Ships that had slipped through the defenses were vaporized in seconds. Maria cried out in disbelief, "He's guiding it!" David gritted his teeth, sweat pouring down his face. The ship's mind pressed against his own, vast and heavy, like holding back a storm with bare hands. But he pushed forward, sending it commands with thought. "Shield here, fire there, strike fast." And the Guardian obeyed. Outside, the battle turned. Alien scouts fell one after another, their weapons silenced, wreckage raining into the burning jungle. For the fire. Rest time. The enemy wavered. Inside the command chamber, the ship's voice echoed with strength. Human bond confirmed. Systems at full power. The walls glowed brighter. The consoles came alive, showing maps of the sky, alerts flashing. The real threat was still on its way. The Armada, massive and endless, moving toward Earth. David staggered, pulling his hand away. The glow of the core dimmed slightly. Maria rushed to his side, holding him up, his face pale, but his eyes alive. "It worked," he whispered. "It listens to us, to me. But it's too much. I can't hold it alone." The ship seemed to hear his words. Another console lit up, showing multiple seats. Interfaces meant for more than one human. Maria looked at it, her fear deep, but her heart steady. "Then we share the bond," she said firmly. David shook his head. "It could burn your mind." "And if we don't," Maria replied, her voice strong, "the enemy destroys Earth. Better to burn with purpose than hide in fear." The others stared at her, their faces torn between terror and courage. Slowly, one by one, they stepped forward, taking places at the consoles, their hands trembling but their eyes fierce. The ship's voice welcomed them. Multiple human links detected, synchronization increasing. The hum became a roar. The Guardian rose taller, its weapons glowing brighter, its shields harder. The fortress was no longer fighting alone. It was fighting with humanity again. Above the burning jungle, the last of the alien scouts were destroyed. Silence returned for a moment, but the explorers knew it would not last. Far in the stars, the enemy armada was coming. David looked up at the sky, his hand still pressed weakly to the console. "We woke the Guardian," he said, his voice steady. And now, together, we fight with it. The bond had been formed, fragile but real, and for the first time in centuries, humanity and the Guardian stood as one. The roar of the jungle ship, the night sky above Earth, was no longer calm. It blazed with fire and shadows as the enemy armada arrived, one by one. Massive alien warships burst out of the dark void, their hulls black and sharp, their lights glowing red like burning eyes. They filled the heavens in swarms, blotting out the stars. The explorers stood within the Guardian's command chamber, their hands pressed to glowing consoles, their thoughts linked to the ship's vast mind. The bond pulsed strong now, each heartbeat matched by the roar of engines, each breath tied to the charge of cannons, humanity and machine moving as one. Maria's eyes shone with determination. "They're here," she whispered, her voice steady despite the fear clawing at her chest. David nodded, sweat dripping down his brow. "Then we answer," he said. Outside, the Guardian rose higher, the jungle breaking apart as hidden towers stretched to the clouds. Its colossal frame gleamed with energy. Vines and roots burned away as pure power surged through its body. The ground trembled as if the earth itself was preparing for war. The first wave of alien fire rained down, streaks of light cutting through the sky. Entire swaths of jungle vanished in explosions, but the Guardian's shields flared bright, absorbing the fury. The explorers felt the impact inside their bones, but they stood firm, feeding their strength into the bond. "Return fire," David commanded through thought. The Guardian obeyed, cannons roared, beams of light cut through the heavens. The first alien warship exploded in a shower of burning metal, pieces crashing into the earth like falling stars. The ground shook with victory, cheers erupted from the explorers. But the joy was short. The armada pressed harder, wave after wave of ships surrounded the planet, thousands of weapons blazing. The Guardian fired again and again, each blast destroying ships, each strike shaking the skies. But the enemy was endless. Maria gasped, gripping her console. Visions filled her mind. The Guardian shared its memory with her. It had fought this war before, centuries ago, and it had stood alone, outnumbered, outmatched, yet it had never fallen. "It remembers how to fight," she whispered. "We just have to keep holding on." David pushed harder into the bond, the strain nearly breaking him, but he refused to let go. His voice echoed inside the ship's mind. "Shield left, strike right, aim for their command ships." The Guardian responded with precision. Massive beams tore through the largest enemy vessels. The armada shuddered as its leaders fell. The aliens screamed through the radio static, their voices sharp and furious. Their fleets shifted formation, encircling the Guardian. Hundreds of ships closed in, firing all at once. The shield flared, cracks spread across it, alarms blared inside the chamber. Panic rippled through the explorers. One shouted, "It's too much, the shield will break." But Maria's voice cut through the fear, steady and fierce. "Then we give it everything, every thought, every breath. We fight with it." They pressed harder, their minds burning under the strain. The bond deepened. For a moment they were no longer separate people, but one force, one will, and the Guardian roared in answer. Its engines ignited with fury. The ground split wide as hidden thrusters blasted. The jungle fortress rose into the sky, tearing free from the earth that had hidden it for centuries. The giant was airborne once more. The alien fleets closed in, but the Guardian moved like lightning, weaving through fire, cannons blazing, missiles streaking, energy surging like storms. Every blast guided by human will. Alien ships exploded one after another, their wreckage raining down. The night sky lit with fire brighter than any sunrise. From Earth below, villagers and cities watched in awe as the jungle itself rose to defend them. For centuries they had believed the stories were myths, but now they saw the truth. Humanity's Guardian was real, and it was alive. The enemy armada began to falter, their numbers great. But their courage breaking, one by one they tried to retreat, but the Guardian gave no mercy. Its voice thundered inside the chamber. "Extinction denied. Humanity endures." David's voice joined it, a roar from human lungs. "For Earth." The Guardian unleashed its final strike, energy building in its core, brighter than the sun. The explorers felt their hearts nearly stop under the force, but they held, channeling all their will into the bond. A colossal beam erupted, slicing through the heavens, tearing entire enemy fleets apart in a single roar. The sky burned with the fire of fallen warships. Silence followed, heavy and endless. The explorers collapsed to their knees, gasping for air. The consoles dimmed, the hum softened, but the Guardians still pulsed, alive, victorious. Outside, the night sky was clear again, stars shone bright. No enemy remained, the jungle below smoldered, scarred but alive, and the giant ship hovered above, its roar still echoing in the hearts of those who heard it. Maria raised her head, her eyes wet with tears. "We did it," she whispered. David looked out at the stars, his voice heavy with both awe and fear. "The war isn't over, but humanity is ready now. We are not alone, not anymore." The Guardian's voice answered softly, almost gentle now. "Humanity and Guardian, one." And as dawn broke over the smoking jungle, the roar of the jungle ship faded into silence, but its promise remained. Whenever humanity called, it would rise again,